we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks again, you guys, for joining another discussion. I'm not going to call it episode.
I'll call it.
All right. Thanks for joining another episode of the Ketonian Korner.
This is sound more official.
Today, we're actually going to talk about side effects of the keto diet. This actually was a question that was submitted for week 1 of our question and answer, but as I started digging into this, it was a lot more to talk about than just to answer a single question. So John and I decided to pull it out and make it its own topic. Before we get started with that, though, there were a couple of things that have come out recently since our last meeting, and one is coconut oil. So I'm sure that everyone has seen the new reports that coconut oil is bad. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit.
I'm surprised if everybody's actually seen it.
Well, maybe not everybody, but if you do follow anything in the keto world, you probably have seen it because it has been flying around on every website and every Facebook page for at least a week. So I want to see what your views are on that, John. I have plenty of views.
I'm drawing a blank. We talked about this, but it's been like a week.
Well, because recently it came out, the reports that eating coconut oil was bad for your health. It was something that they didn't recommend, which goes against everything that we have said so far. So just kind of wanted to bring that up and kind of touch point in case people do have questions about it. I want to address it as this is in the media right now. So.
Yeah, and it's been a little bit since I actually read about that, but one of the things that it talks about is the different types of coconut oil, and there are different qualities of coconut oil. There are different types of medium chain, and when it goes through the entire gamut of that, there is oh wow. Somebody's in the WebEx sharing, the Skype sharing the link to the study. But basically, when it comes down to it, it was kind of breaking down a little bit more of and not looking at it as a whole food and kind of criticizing it on a breakdown. So I'll go ahead and pull up the study since somebody just handed me a link to it. So, but when we talked about it, unfortunately, this doesn't revolving around what we were going through. But I am going to scroll past the advertisement, and it hits on the saturated fat piece. And we're not going to spend a ton of time belaboring the saturated fat piece, but you do need to realize that. What you read, you also need to read everything about saturated fat, because one of the reasons why they're demonizing it is revolving around the saturated piece, which we've already talked about multiple times on whether or not saturated versus unsaturated fat is something you need to be concerned about. So depending on what kind of opinions you formed upon that, the other thing is coconut oil has different sources. And if you're buying really cheap coconut oil, you kind of need to ask yourself, because sometimes it's not from coconut, it's actually from palm. And so check your labels. And when the study, they kind of refer to the particular sourcing of that. But that is startling. You'll see the exact same headlines around olive oil and olive oil being laced with other things. So you just kind of need to be aware. It goes back to some of the same concepts we always talk about. Look at the angle, and what the stance is, what they're assuming when they're talking about the study, and then look at the source of where you're getting your stuff. I do know that I shop at Costco, so I can't tell you that coconut oil from Costco is a legitimately sourced product.
Yeah. So again, I really just wanted to bring it up because there have been so many questions about it. Oh my gosh, we've been saying that this is a great thing. Now what do you think? Because these people have come out and said that they believe it was all a big mistake. This is Jolene's opinion. I have lots of them, but I think there are so many things wrong with this. It actually makes me a little angry that something like the American Heart Association would come forward with this sort of thing, just because most people view this as a reputable place to get information, right? So I personally do not believe that this is a terrible food. Like John said, you do have to do the quality, just kind of check yourself, but it's the same with anything. So for me, coconut oil remains to be a good thing, something that I will continue to consume. I think that just like everything that we talk about, you need to do your own research, make your own opinions, but I do not believe that taking this one research release that you should completely abandon and go back to eating the standard American diet or eliminating this from a ketogenic diet. So just my 2 cents.
I used it last night, so there's my personal opinion. And I know it kind of, sometimes we beat dead horses, but not everybody's listened to everything we've put out. So, I followed the American Heart Association when I was trying to lower my blood pressure and cut out sodium, and that did not matter to me. I strictly cut out sodium, and it was the most painful month of my life, and it did not change my blood pressure at all. So, your results may vary, but I kind of started to not pay attention to that association back then. So maybe I have some preconceived notions, but I like to just air those out so you guys know where we're coming from on our opinions.
Yeah, and I did, if you guys follow us on Facebook, I did post an article that Maria Emmerich wrote. She wrote this very eloquently, so I grabbed her comments and threw it out on our Facebook. So again, most people who are in the keto community do not buy into this. So just kind of wanted to squelch that.
Man, that's killing me with the ads. Jeez.
Yeah.
You guys are watching this thing, man. That cannot get away from ads at all.
Okay. So on to today's topic.
It did say up there that it suggests.
Yeah. Well, and again, I have found that through all of this, I want to know who's funding the research before I really look at it.
Have you gone to the American Heart Association website and seen if there's anything on it? Because that's another media outlet taking what they said. I mean, if I was doing it, that's what I would do. I'd want to try and get to the source and try to understand it instead of trying to get it right from the horse's mouth, I guess.
Right, which I have not. To be honest, there may have been some.
I'm saying it's wrong, but I like to verify.
Yeah, it's just been posted a lot on different Facebook sites, and a lot of people have had questions on it. So I have not taken the time, to be quite honest, because I don't believe it anyway. So I didn't take the time to go research that. But okay, so for today, the side effects of keto. This was actually a question that was posed for our first of the month question and answer session. And the question was, what are some of the side effects of keto? So we have talked about some of these. Again, if you guys listen to every week, I apologize. But I do like to answer people's question and not just say, go listen to whatever, or go look it up. So I did want to address this. One of the main things that you will find, and we have talked a lot about this, is loss of salts. So because you have increased urine production once you start eating keto, your body uses the stored sugars, which it releases the water into your blood. So it flushes all the salts out. That's why we have said probably, 1,000 times, up your salt consumption. That goes against most everything that we have ever been taught and everything that we've ever learned, because if you eat a lot of salt, then you retain water. But with the ketogenic diet, that really just doesn't happen. So that is the biggest thing that I have seen, and the biggest feedback that I've gotten from people who I have helped with this way of eating. Anything that you want to add to this, John? Just jump in here, because I'm just going to keep talking.
I do the same things, and you'll probably do the majority of the talking since you got questions in front of you. But I do agree that I have upped my salt take a little bit in minerals, but we have talked about that before, and just really, I prefer salting at the last cooking. I've never had any negative impact from low sodium. So all those side effects that other people have, I don't know if it's
What are those?
work out. Oh, that's a great question. What are the side effects for low? It's like it's fatigue and
nausea can come from it. Fatigue. Actually, I'm going to cover some of these things that salt will happen, but heart palpitations can happen from it. Leg cramps, which most people actually think is magnesium and or potassium, but it can be caused from low sodium. And I unfortunately have had some of those. I did not get what they call keto flu, but I did, and I do sometimes experience leg cramps, so I know if I have not had the correct amount of sodium. And I am one who came from 0 sodium pre-keto. I never cooked with it. I never put it on my food after. I did not like the taste of it. I can tell you, pre-keto, I purchased maybe 2 containers in my adult life of salt. I just did not like it. So upping the salt for me has been kind of a challenge.
You actually supplement salt, right?
I did used to, but it started affecting my stomach.
There are people, especially, so if we were going to stereotype it and put it in groups, very highly active individuals, you usually see that around keto bodybuilders or keto CrossFit, those type of activity levels, triathletes. You'll see that they'll sometimes actually be physically taking salt tablets and adding sodium to theirs.
And I used to make my own. Like, I bought the capsules and I filled them. But again, I started having issues with my stomach. Once I stopped the salt, those went away, so I'm pretty sure that's what it was from.
So when you take your salt, then does your symptom go away?
It does.
Immediately? I shouldn't say immediately, because it obviously, when you ingest it, it takes a while for it to get into the system.
So depending on what you take, if I wake up in the night with maybe a leg cramp or on the verge of one, I will go to the refrigerator and drink pickle juice, and that is almost instant.
Okay.
And so it's gone before I get from the kitchen back to my bed. If I'm actually taking salt, that does take a little bit longer. I'm not sure what the difference between those two are.
Liquid versus solid?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Because liquid will go in your system faster than a solid will. Solid's got to break it down.
Yeah. But and again, that is my own personal experience. I know that other people have reported those same sort of things working for them. But for people who start to have leg cramps, and that's the next thing that that is a symptom of it, that is one thing that I do recommend. I actually have a jar of pickle juice. We've eaten the pickles, and I leave the juice in the refrigerator just for that purpose.
Oh, God, makes me cringe. I hate pickles.
And I can also do it with olive brine. So I have a big, huge jar of green olives in my refrigerator, and I can do that as well. So, but leg cramps is the next symptom or the next side effect, and that can happen truly with low salt consumption again, or if you do not have enough water. And again, we've said drink water to thirst, I don't think there's a magic number for everyone. Everybody's different. But if you do start finding that you are having leg cramps or any cramping, a lot of people have it. I've heard people have it in their arms. I have never experienced that, but if you have it in your feet or your legs.
In my hands and feet.
Okay.
In addition to my legs.
Wow, okay. I would suggest salt first, water as well, helps those. Magnesium can be taken as well, but my recommendation would be to try the salt and the water first. If those are not seeming to take the symptoms away, or if they just keep reoccurring, maybe check with the magnesium. We have said numerous times again, potassium is something that I do not recommend. Outside of the first couple of weeks of doing keto, I don't recommend taking potassium because too much of it can be dangerous as well as too little. So that is something that I truly recommend, that if you do not know what your levels are, please go to your doctor, have that tested, and try to do the potassium as advised by your physician. One of the next ones, and actually this is something that's probably not work appropriate, but since we're doing this at work and that's where I'm talking about it, but constipation. So a lot of people do experience that in the beginning of eating keto. So it is common, and one of the reasons is because the gut bacteria needs time to adjust to your new eating and the different kinds of food, the different quantities. After a few days to maybe a week, that should start stabilizing and that should go away. I have found, and I recommend to people that I talk to, is coconut oil helps to keep you regular. So eating coconut oil on a daily basis will assist with that. And of course, John and I love coconut oil, so you're going to get a good benefit out of that beyond just helping with constipation. So
I've never had it.
Never had constipation. Really? You are a miracle.
But I did not. I think since I had a more gradual conversion to, and I'm not a strict keto, I think I've just never had those issues come up because of the change in diet. But I've had the opposite problem where I've had too much MTC oil and I got disaster pants. But that's a whole different subject. I overshare.
That's okay. The next one is heart palpitations. Again, discussed a little bit earlier, but this one actually is pretty normal. If you are getting the right amount of salt and the right amount of water, and you do not have any heart condition, and I want to stress that, if you do not have any prior conditions, this is really not something that you should worry about unless it is a prolonged thing. But there is a transition period that a lot of people do go through it. I did not have it. A lot of people do report it though, and I actually went out and sought some doctors what they are telling their patients when they're prescribing this, and what they say is that it is pretty normal during transition of coming off of carbs. They believe that it is kind of a detox, but again, no medical history of heart issues. You know that you're getting plenty of salt and plenty of water. If it happens for longer, then I would say a week and a half to 2 weeks, you may want to seek medical advice, but it is pretty common.
So what exactly is that?
A heart palpitation?
Yeah. Is that like just
so
heart beating fast?
Yeah, so I have had them in the past, but it was pre-keto. I have not had anything since then, but basically you'll just be sitting and all of a sudden your heart will just start, it almost feels like you are running. Your heart starts beating really fast and then it goes back to normal. At least that's what I was told mine were, is when I went to the doctor for it, that it was heart palpitations.
So like if my wife walks by?
Sure.
That causes palpitation. Well, apparently it does for you.
Yeah, let's hope all husbands have that. Buddy, if you're listening to this.
Guess we'll tell you.
But yeah, so I mean, it's just a change in rhythm of the heart that it will go back to your normal rhythm. Now, I mean, some people have like a heart murmur, and sometimes they can feel that, sometimes they can't.
And I have a heart murmur, which is kind of why I asked, because I have that in my mind what I think it is, but then it's just always nice to air that out if somebody isn't familiar with that.
Yeah. So then keto flu is the next possible side effect. And again, this is something that I did not experience myself, but the way it's described is brain fog or slow thinking, dizziness, fatigue, the racing heart when you lay down, insomnia, cravings, headaches, and nausea. So a few of those things I do have, but I've had for years, and they have nothing to do with keto. So insomnia I have, and headaches all the time. But if you up your salt, many of these things go away immediately, or when I say immediately, within the day of you upping your salt, many of those symptoms will go away. Some of them people do continue to have. Headaches are one thing that you may have for a while if you're detoxing from something such as a diet soda or something with artificial sweeteners, and we have touched on that a little bit before, but that can be something that is a little bit more, that lasts a little bit longer for you if you are detoxing from that. My suggestion to everybody is just to fight through it. It does go away, thankfully. It doesn't last long, but sometimes it is concerning to people. But again, if you do not have any health issues that would cause any of those things to happen, you don't need to necessarily seek medical opinions about it or medical advice, but it will go away. If it is prolonged, you might want to seek advice from your doctor. But bad breath. Unfortunately, this is a side effect. Everybody will get it. It does go away, thankfully, but people have reported that it is fruity smelling, and I think I've said this before. I don't know what kind of fruit smells like that, but if that's what it smells like to people, okay. But again, it is temporary. It does go away after a couple of weeks, as long as you stay eating keto. If you go off and you go out of ketosis, then all bets are off. So it's going to linger for a lot longer. Lack of energy. Some people do report this. I was never one that had that, and I think because I was low carb for so long before I found keto. But some people do report that they have lack of energy in the beginning. And again, this is a short-term thing. You should be, be experiencing the energy that we all talk about. You just got to ride it out for a couple of days. If you work out and you work out heavy, your workouts may be impacted by the level of energy in the beginning. But again, if you push through, it'll bounce back, and you should have a lot more energy than you had before.
A couple of comments from the Skype. They were talking about, and from a blog, I Breathe, I'm Hungry. They were talking about just a little bit of that for the carb flu piece, that the vitamin C will help avoid the headaches, cramps, and headaches.
I have never heard
said
that.
Headaches twice. Lightheadedness, cramps, and headaches.
Interesting. I've never heard that one.
And that, back to the salt, also that if you use half potassium. And we talked about potassium. I know you were talking about that, but I didn't exactly remember. Could you talk to that? If this particular website he's referencing said half salt and half potassium.
So I'm wondering if it is the salt that you can purchase that has potassium in it.
Oh.
That one I'm less concerned about, but from me personally, I would not recommend somebody actually take a potassium supplement without seeking advice from their physician. Because if you are on the high level, and again, we've talked about how you can get potassium from food. If you are somebody who gets a lot of potassium from food, so you're on the higher levels of the range, and then you supplement with you could be putting yourself into a position that you don't want to be in.
The only way to test for potassium is to get blood work done, right?
To my knowledge, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, so yeah.
So if it is the salt,
referring to the salt with potassium.
yeah, if it is that, I mean, this quantity of it is fairly low. It's probably not going to impact your levels that much. So, I mean, unless you're downing a bunch of salt, which I would caution anybody doing that to begin with. But yeah, if it is the salt, then that would be fine. Those you have to watch because they do add dextrose to some of those, so you just got to look at the labels and see which ones do not have the added sugars to it. But thank you for the vitamin C. I had never heard that, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just Googled how to tell if your potassium is too high, and it's unfortunately some of the same things as carb flu. So you would have a hard time knowing the difference. So I guess it would be my advice then, just off Dr. Google, would be to if he continues to.
Yeah,
and if it doesn't help you kick the carb flu.
Yeah, and that's why I start with the least first, right? Do your salt, then and obviously make sure you're getting enough water. But if you know those are spot on, maybe try magnesium, and then if it still continues, I would go seek advice from your physician. So some of the next things, these are less common side effects, but some people do experience hair loss. So I did research this one quite extensively because I have a friend who had reported this to me that she was experiencing, and that's what she thought it was from. Much to my surprise, it's not uncommon, and I guess I didn't really realize that changing your eating habits drastically, that is something that it can cause. So generally, it will happen within the first 5 months of starting a dramatic diet change. And again, it does not have to be keto. I mean, the hair loss is not directly linked to keto. It is actually linked to a drastic change in eating habits. But if it lasts longer than the first 5 months, or if it starts after you have done this, if it starts after 5 months of being keto, there probably is something else going on, and I would recommend that you do go have testing done and at least have that conversation with your physician, because of everything that I have read says that it should stop by 5 months, and that it should not start if you have changed your eating habits longer than 5 months ago. So.
You're not talking about all your hair falling out. You're talking about as you're brushing your hair.
Yeah. So for me, and I've been pretty open with some of the health issues that I've had. So for me, I have a thyroid issue, and I have lost a lot of hair. And that is very typical for me. When I get out of the shower, I would sometimes have a fistful of hair. So it can be caused by, things going on in your body, and that's why I say if it happens longer than 5 months, or if it starts after 5 months. But for me, I actually have less hair loss today than what I had pre-keto. So I'm pretty happy with that. And although my thyroid has not completely come around and been fixed, the hair loss has gotten better for me.
So does the hair loss last, or I already have some hair loss, so that's very concerning to me. Will the hair that I lose on a keto diet regrow?
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, it can last up to 5 months, is what I found on the research. Most people are reporting 1 to 2 months of it happening. And it's not like you're losing patches of hair. It's not like alopecia. It's that you're, on a daily basis, you shed an X amount normally. This is just that you're shedding more than normal. So especially for women, because we have longer hair, it looks like an abundance, and it is startling, to be honest, when you're in the shower and you have a lot more hair than what you're typically used to. But no, it's not like you're going to have patches of baldness or that you're not going to ever grow it back. It does generate the same as any other hair loss. You're just losing it at a little bit faster rate. And again, it may not happen to you. It doesn't happen to everyone, but there are some people who it does happen to. And to be quite honest, through the research, I couldn't find a link for those who it was happening to versus those that it didn't. So
same thing. Obviously, I don't know. I'm a guy, but similar to what women go through sometimes during pregnancy.
I would assume so. Yes. Unfortunately, I've never been pregnant, but I would assume.
That's why but I think that same thing. I've heard enough people that had a unusual or double hair loss during pregnancy, so it could be hormonal.
And I was just going to say that. So this is my personal opinion on this, and again, I have not found anything where research says that this is it. But my personal opinion is that I think that it is because there is a very large change in your hormone, especially with keto, because it does stabilize hormones, that I personally think that's where the link is that it's a hormone change in your system, and that's what's causing. Now, I would assume that men as well have the hair loss, but maybe it's not as noticeable because you keep your hair shorter than we do. I don't know. But most of the things that I found were women having the concern.
I'm considering a mullet. Maybe I should not. No.
There you go. Yeah, grow it out. Let's see.
So if your hair does start to fall out, or you find yourself in that category when you were looking through, any supplementation suggestions, or you didn't get that far?
They really didn't. Some people were saying more protein. Some people were saying no. And I think it goes back. Yeah, I think it goes back to, old thinking from the fad diet, to be quite honest, because I think that would be a recommendation from doctors who prescribe your standard American, is that you need to up your protein. But
so I just want to say the chat is fantastic today.
Absolutely.
You guys don't have your laptops in front of you. We're getting quite a few interactions from
that is awesome. The phones are open too, you guys, so if you want to jump in here and have a conversation, I'm totally okay with that.
You sound like an infomercial. Phone lines are open.
Please chat with me. The next one is increased. Yeah. The next one is increased cholesterol. Now,
this is Timony. Before you move on, I'm sorry. So, in regards to the hair loss, I don't know if you answered the question. I'm so sorry. Multivitamins or hair and nail vitamins, are they recommended while going through the process?
Yeah, again, there was a lot of people's opinions as to what would help, but there was nothing solid that I could find that actually suggested that anything. Now, I mean, I would recommend, a multivitamin or whatever anyway, but I did not find a link where that would be something that would reverse it or stop it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the doctors that I went out to their sites, that was not something that they were recommending as a treatment for it either. Not saying that they didn't recommend it in general, but that was not something that if their patients were coming to them with this, that was something that they were suggesting. Most of them honestly just said, write it out. If it lasts longer, then we'll take action to see if something else was going on. So, but the increased cholesterol. So, unfortunately, most of us who start this have excess weight to lose, and it's kind of common from the research that I have found in the beginning that the cholesterol levels will increase. So I would say that your first set of testing after you start a ketogenic diet. I wouldn't get too concerned about it and, panic, because after that, your triglycerides will start to come down, as well as the HDL. And John and I have talked about the small particle testing versus the traditional testing as well. That is something that, again, in the beginning, the particle, the large particles, is it the large that are bad, the small? I can't remember. But whichever one of them is the worst, that will raise a little bit in the beginning as well, and then will start to come down, and you should be fine. One of the things that I saw, and it actually isn't an effect of it, but people were concerned with it causing gallstones. What I found on that is that keto actually helps people, and again, there is no studies that are doing this, but from anecdotal, people are saying that it improved or cured their gallstone problem. Some people do have discomfort in the beginning if you already have gallstones, but if you stick with the keto and once you stabilize, those do seem to diminish. The next thing that people were concerned about is being able to do ketogenic diet with no gallbladder. The only thing that I have seen on this is that some people have to spread their fats out through the day versus having large quantities of fat in one meal. So, it's kind of a trial and error. If you eat a high fat and you are having issues, I would suggest to try to spread those out and see if that helps. But that is the only thing that it was talking about. Nowhere did I find that it said that people with no gallbladder should not do this. So, did you have something to add to that?
No, I was just going to tell you last question.
Okay. Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
I have my gallbladder, so I'm ready to go.
Does anybody have any questions on the phones or any comments or in the room for that matter?
Or something they've struggled with?
I got a question about cooking. So if I marinate some meat with stuff that's not considered ketogenic, how does that affect it? So in other words, I take a pork roast and I marinate in apple juice. And I pitch the apple juice, when I'm done.
Well, you're still going to be consuming it. It does absorb into the fibers.
Right.
So, for me, I would not do it, but it is a personal preference. It really is all in what your desired outcome is.
Yeah. And I would answer that slightly different. This is the kind of that's why it's kind of nice to have us both here. Because for me, it's like if I use sugar and bacon is the one that kind of comes up a lot. And when it's cured, most of the sugar, most quote unquote, the sugar comes out. So there is always a little residue in that. But the percentage is so small, I find.
So that's what I was wondering.
I find that.
Yeah.
I don't let perfection be like something that rules my life. So when it's something like that, I tend to just let it slide. So now that's a little different than, let's say, for instance, your marinade was a teriyaki marinade that had a lot of sugar in it. It's a little different than apple juice. Apple juice is.
And I'm talking just plain old apple juice, not something that's.
Because you're using the sugar to break down the meat to make it a little more tender and give it a little flavor. And I tend to not worry so much about that. But you can get burnt very fast, though, if you're talking about a marinade that is high in sugar content, and that ends up baking on, kind of like the philosophy would be like barbecue sauce on ribs. Right. All that sugar is literally baked into those ribs.
Yeah.
So you got to find your line there.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, my question was how much of it cooks out?
Well, you're throwing a lot of it away, but there's still going to be some there. Even if, let's just say on average 50%, I'm just guessing, you're still going to have a little bit in there. So.
Yeah. Now I do the bacon, mainly because I'm just going to buy bacon, right?
You don't cure your own?
I do not cure my own bacon. But for me personally, I wouldn't add something to it, like at my house. And I also do not purchase ham, oddly, just because I haven't found any that doesn't have sugar content, where bacon generally listed as cured with, and then there's not added. So, again, personal preference though, and it really is. Now, I mean, if you would ask my husband that, he is much like John. He'll be strict as he needs to be, but he's an 80-20, and I'm a very black and white kind of person. So.
Okay. So if you guys got questions, I know you're going to hit them along the way. So just to kind of reach out, we're starting to get better at a social media presence. I'm not going to pretend like we're good at any of this stuff. That's why this is
I do check email every day, and sometimes multiple times a day. So if you guys do have questions, you can do email.
So maybe I should change that to say, I am horrible at all these things. She's much better than I am. But if you have other questions, feel free to email us, because not in 2 weeks we'll have another question and answer. It seems like a pretty good cadence to do like just a generic question and answer first of every month. So what you're struggling with, anything along those lines, feel free to send them in. Next week is a 7-day carb test, which is something that you'll read about. I'll talk about it, and just a heads up, that has to do with the blood meter. So I'll talk about, if blood meters are cheap. They're at every hardware store. They're at every, I don't know if they're hardware stores, but they're everywhere. Walmart, everywhere. And then off this, not related to this particular one, but an Activate one. We've had 2 presentations under Activate on minimalist lifestyle, and we're going to do like a 1-year update since we had our last minimalist event, and that's going to be me sharing my experiences. So completely not health related at all. But if you're interested in that, that's on the Activate calendar also. Anything to add? I'm trying to be better at giving you guys a heads up of what's coming, because we've not been very good at that.
Yeah, and I would encourage you guys to send us, if you guys have success stories, we totally want to hear those. We want to include those, and we've been doing this long enough that I'm sure we've got some success stories out there. Give us any feedback if you guys want to see anything different.
Or if we're just missing completely something that would make it easier for you to stay involved, just drop us a line too. We're newbies. We don't really know what we're doing, so we're struggling through this just like you might be struggling through keto. So.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you guys for joining.